Okay, welcome to the Tibetan Buddhist Society Peaceful Land of Joy. Um, we're going to show you around this our 10-acre garden. This is a virtual garden tour because of the COVID restrictions at the moment. So as we go around, we'll just see some of the various features in the garden. Uh, so we moved here in 1988 from East Melbourne, and there was a rented property, nice a little garden. It was perfect because you could do all the gardening in 20 minutes and then go and watch television. But now here we are with 10 acres of very sticky clay and yeah, a magnificent garden to look after. So the plant collection comprises both natives and exotic plants. A lot of roses. We focused on roses a fair bit. Fair few salvias. Lots of herbaceous perennials. In terms of trees, we've got lots of golden robinias, sequoias, California redwoods, a few cedars you can see around the dam, and so on. So yeah, the purpose of the Tibetan Buddhist Society is it's a meditation center, but also we have quite a big focus on gardening here. And both of those activities, they're pretty much complementary. So really the purpose is to try and uh, provide the ancient wisdom from India and Tibet and to bring some peace and happiness into people's lives, like both in meditation where you still the mind and relax, but also out in the garden. It's where you can easily lose yourself, and yeah, many people find gardening very peaceful and very good for the body and soul. So yeah, they're complementary. And similarly, in the garden, you've got to weed, pull out and cultivate the soil, then you can get this flourishing of a beautiful sort of vista of flowers and so on. And similarly, in meditation, we try the Buddha taught we try to weed out our unhappy states of mind, such as too much worry or upset or anger and so on, and dissatisfaction. And then we cultivate all the good qualities through meditation. We cultivate what we call our enlightened qualities, and you try and develop this sort of similar flourishing that we experience in the garden. So the two do complement each other very much. Okay, so the centre was founded by Geshe Chara Tupten Loden, who is the spiritual head. Was a very highly accomplished meditation master and scholar who came from Tibet, and we were fortunate enough to have him living here for more than 30 years. But he emphasized when we first came here in 1988 to Euroke, we're just on north of Melbourne, a suburb called Euroke. There wasn't a great deal of colour in the garden, and that was one of Geshe's main goals, was to introduce lots and lots of colour, because yeah, it's useful for stimulating the mind and making people happy. This area around here is you can see a few different things, salvias and lavender and so on, a few roses. This area is called the bird lawn, and the birds get fed every morning, 6 o'clock, a good feed of nicely cut up bread and rice, and we get hundreds and hundreds of different birds. We get a lot of ducks, and we get parrots, sparrows, and there's always birdsong in this garden. And many visitors who come here, they do remark it just seems such a peaceful place. As well as organic gardening, we're practicing sort of a Buddhist tradition, so we try to minimize any harm in the garden, even to insects. So, for example, you see these calendulas down here. They're a companion plant. So with companion plants, there's two types. There's ones with strong smell, like pyrethrum and garlic, and they cause the insects to fly out of your garden into your neighbour's garden. Um, but the other type of companion plant, such as these calendulas, they attract the pests towards them. So you can protect your roses. You can plant French marigolds or calendulas. You see, if I touch them, you see all these little flies flying off. Um, so yeah, that's one method of dealing with pests in the garden. Okay, we'll head off and see some roses. So the roses are just starting to bloom here. We've got thousands of buds coming through. We've got a collection of some hybrid teas here we can show you. This one is called First Prize, a beautiful pink blend, and that opens into a very, very large bloom. Then next one along here is a very, very fragrant red called Oklahoma. I think that was bred about 50 years ago, but very extremely rich, deep fragrance. Then one over here is the white. That's a good strong white memoir. Doesn't get much disease, and yeah. And across here there's a pink-white blend called Pristine. So you can see that there is beautiful, few flies on it, but beautiful flower. And this one's a very extremely vigorous bush. This is called Fragrant Charm. So when you go to buy a rose, roses, they tend to breed them for the flowers, and often the breeders don't focus so much on the health of the plant. So if you make the mistake like we did, where you buy ones with nice names, often after a couple of months they come back and all the black spot has devastated the leaves because you're no longer spraying them with all these carcinogens, all these pesticides. So it's a good idea to find in your neighbourhood the varieties that grow most strongly and focus on those. Ones like this Fragrant Charm. Another thing with roses, if you plant them a metre apart, you allow some airflow, so you get less fungal problems. You need to feed them up because modern garden roses are repeat flowering. So that's been bred in from about 200 years ago, this repeat flowering characteristic, where once the flowers are finished, if you chop them off, you'll get a new shoot and new blooms on most modern garden roses. The thing about it is, though, that every time you chop off, say, that stem when the flowers are finished, you're taking about 16 different nutrients out of the soil. So modern garden roses are sucking nutrients out of the soil continuously, and you have to feed them up. Roses need about 16 nutrients, like lots of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and so on. So what we do here, we use different types of composts and manures, organic fertilizers, and mix it up a bit. And clay soil is also good because it holds the nutrients quite nicely. So yeah, people people often worry that they haven't pruned their roses, but roses have been around for 30 to 70 million years. And they colonized half of the planet, the northern hemisphere, and there wasn't a caveman running around snipping them off, and they did very well. So it doesn't matter so much if you don't prune them, but what a bush will naturally do is reduce the flow of sap to the older wood. So in winter time when you're pruning, it's good to take some of the older wood out and keep your bush nice and young. So we might head off to another spot. So as well as hybrid teas in our rose collection, we've got quite a few Austins, David Austin roses. And the distinctive characteristic of those is often the bloom is a cup shape or rosette shape, quite a rounded bud, not elongated like the hybrid teas. And what David Austin did, he mixed modern garden roses with the old-fashioned varieties. So the old-fashioned varieties often had this type of flower form, but they had limited color range. mainly sort of whites, mauve, red, and limited repeat flowering characteristics. So David Austin mixed this old world form and the vigor of the old world bushes, but introduced lots of modern garden colour and the repeat flowering. So we see there's a very nice one just over here. Um, it's called Abraham Darby. So you can see the strength of this bush. There's so many buds coming through, and beautiful rosette form, and also a good fragrance. Yeah, you get some pretty good fragrance out of the Austins, generally speaking. So one thing about rose fragrance, this is another extremely fragrant rose. Roses, the scent in a rose. Humans have been growing roses for the scent for thousands of years, like the ancient Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, the Chinese, the Persians. They were all growing roses, and it was very handy in pre-plumbing days because we were all a bit whiffy. So you could get these scented buds and put them into olive oil, and you've got a nice fragrant oil. Um, these days, in countries like Bulgaria and France, they use steam distillation to get pure rose oil, but it takes a huge number of buds, hundreds of thousands of buds, to get 1 litre of oil. So it's very expensive. Uh, yeah, but a rose oil has up to 80 different compounds in it, and so you get a good variety of fragrance. You get ones that smell like lemon, raspberry, strawberry, and you get the really rich ones like the damask and gallica scents that they were growing through the Middle Ages. In monasteries, they often had the apothecaries rose, it was called, for healing. Um, yeah, so yeah, rose scents probably a greater range of scent than any other flowering plant, maybe, and certainly that's why one reason people love roses. The reason we plant roses is our spiritual. I asked our spiritual head one time. He said they simply that they make people happy. Uh, so you see a big flower, you plonk your nose in it, and you feel happy. So here in the garden, amongst the tree collection, we've got quite a few Californian redwoods. In California, they're the most massive tree in the world. They grow up to 110 meters high. Um, you can see the beautiful new growth, very distinct to the old growth. And unusually for conifers, you can cut them back hard and they'll re-sprout, unlike things like cypresses and pines. Um, yeah, and so if we come past the redwood, the sequoia, we see here's the golden robinia, and we've planted many of these in the garden. There's probably about 40 in this garden, and you can see there's Geshe planted an ark full of golden robinias from the lake. That's the water supply for the garden. We catch a lot of water in the lawns and the driveways and so on, and made a nice arc of golden robinias running all the way up to the traditional Tibetan temple. So on a sunny day, it's really dazzling to see these robinias, and also the roses. At the moment, the roses aren't in; they're just starting to come out. But in 2 weeks' time, all the roses and salvias will be out, and there'll just be a real festival of colour here. So this rose, for example, that's Diamond Jubilee. It's an old, quite an old variety, and very reliable. Um, yeah, we see further down. There's a few just starting to come through. Different roses. Over here, there's a nice. Over here, there's a nice stripy rose. That's an American bred rose called Seduction. So it looks a bit like a carnation, um, and reasonably strong. A lot of the stripy ones don't seem to be that strong variety. Here's another Austin coming through. Look, you can see the traditional old world shape. And again, lots and lots of calendulas to act as a companion plant with the roses. So the centerpiece of the garden, of this area of the garden, is our traditional Tibetan temple, which was constructed in 2000. First traditional temple, Tibetan temple built in Australia. And we had craftsmen from India and Nepal to help with the ornamentation and the construction. It's all handmade, the ornaments, and each of the ornaments has a particular meaning on the Buddhist path to enlightenment. So, for example, the Buddha's first teaching was, it's called the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, was in Deer Park. And you see in the center of the temple, above the door there's the Dharma wheel, and surrounded by the male and female deer, which represent alertness and peacefulness. So the ornamentation, for example, the male and female deer around the wheel, the Dharma wheel, the Buddha's first teaching 2,500 years ago was in a place called Deer Park, and it was called the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, and of the Four Noble Truths. And the male and female deer represent alertness and peacefulness, which are two of the qualities we try and cultivate in meditation. The temple's got many different functions. For example, we do sort of relaxation type healing meditations. There's introductory classes, Buddhist philosophy classes. We have festivals with interfaith prayer ceremonies for world peace, so different representatives of different Buddhist traditions. Out the back in the dining, we run meditation retreats regularly throughout the years. And out the back, occasionally in the dining room, we've had quite a few fundraising dinners. We raise a lot of funds for different charities and different causes, both in Australia and outside, things like the farmers' drought, and bushfire, earthquakes, and also we provide food and a sit-down meal down at Banksia Community Centre in Broadmeadows once a fortnight. So Geshe, our spiritual head Geshe Loden was very emphasised the importance, as well as keeping us we're pretty busy here maintaining the property and running the courses, but also being involved with the community also. So, and Geshe was a Tibetan refugee, and he came to live in Australia. He was invited to come and teach here, and he'd often say he'd never forget the kindness of the Australian people have shown him, that he's been drinking Australian water, eating Australian food, and been supported by Australian people. And Geshe said this is one way of repaying the kindness, is to establish these very peaceful meditation centres. So as the world gets, I suppose the world is becoming more and more speeded up, revved up, and maybe more and more agitated people, less and less patience, and so on. Then there's a peaceful place to come and settle the mind, whether it's on the meditation cushion or out here in the garden. Then yeah, so that's why this garden is maintained by volunteers, and that's why we're all prepared to. Many people are involved, and that's why we're prepared to put in. We see it as something very useful in the community and in Victoria. So yeah, that's. There's a beautiful rose here I want to show you called Just Joey. This is a classic. This is one of my favourite roses, Just Joey. Really unusual sort of ripple on the leaf, and yeah, a really rich sort of apricot-y. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but lovely rose. So this is a floribunda. It was a Scottish bred rose called Cheerio, but I think in Australia it's it's sold as Playboy. They name roses with names they think are going to sell well. Um, yeah, but it's you see how the color changes between the yellow orange, and then when the heat gets onto it, it turns a deeper red, which is quite common with the reds. They turn mauvey. So roses tend to change color a bit in the sun. Um, Further up here, we can see the salvias still, they haven't come through quite yet. They're just about to flower. But there's quite a number of varieties of different salvias in this garden, and lots of pelargoniums. You see, they're always very reliable for good colour and beautiful little sort of patterns on the petals with the pelargoniums. Over here is a yellow rose. It's just starting to come through. That's our best cut flower in the garden. That's called St. Patrick, and you can get up to 3 weeks in the vase with St. Patrick. So some people think, well, that's strange having a Christian saint on the corner of a Buddhist temple, but that's interfaith tradition for you. And often I get asked, what's the connection with roses and Buddhism? Because in Christianity, there's a very long tradition of the rose being a symbol of Lord Jesus Christ's purity. And Mother Mary is often seen in visions surrounded by roses. And the rosary is made often from rosewood or from rolled up rose petals, which you can dry and make into balls and drill through. Um, but in Buddhism, I don't think there's a strong historical connection to roses. The main flower used in Buddhism is the lotus flower, because in ancient India, you'd have a very murky swamp, and then from this sort of very uh, dirty place, you get this beautiful, pristine lotus flower arising. And the Buddha said that's a wonderful symbol of renunciation, which is the mind that experiences suffering. And we experience our suffering of dissatisfaction and worry and anger and being upset. And the mind of renunciation is like coming out of that swamp of suffering and saying, I don't want this anymore. I've had enough. And so all the pictures of Buddhas and enlightened beings you'll find in the temples, they're sitting on lotus flowers because it's the basis of us moving towards enlightenment, realizing we've had enough of swamp-like being upset and being angry and being dissatisfied and so on. So yeah, the lotus flower is a big thing in Buddhism. As we look up this bed here, there's lots of salvias. You can see here, they're part of the mint family. They're the largest genus in the mint family, and they're very oily. They're a very fragrant leaf, and so the insects don't really bother them, and they flower again and again and again. So as soon as they finish flowering, I tend to just chop them with a hedge trimmer, feed them up a bit, and they come back very quickly. So, and the good thing with salvias, you get very few weeds through. They're so dense, and that's a big bonus in a garden like this one. So, yeah. Range of pelargoniums we've got growing here, from the very deep red ones through to this orangey coral coloured, and then again to this beautiful sort of pinky mauve with nice pattern on the leaf. So here's the salvias range from tropical ones like this, which grows sort of 2 to 3 meters high. This is called Costa Rica blue, and we found when we planted this, then we get tons of a lot of the honey eaters, the New Holland honey eaters. They absolutely love. So they've got a beautiful golden face and golden stripe on the wing, and they sit on these blue flowers and eat the nectar. And other salvias like these ones, they're not as drought tolerant as the small leaf salvias, like the Mexicanas, but yeah, if you have enough water, then they give a lot of flower. And these ones are just about to come through. This is a bright red one. So up on the temple, you can see some of the ornamentation. This is all handmade, um, yeah, handmade from concrete and shaped. These different, I suppose you call them shields. They're actually represent the 8 auspicious symbols, or 8 lucky symbols. For example, there's the golden fishes over there, and the parasol, which is a symbol of protection. And yeah, there's a lot of different coral ornament. So these sort of thousands of years old. These symbols used in Buddhism and used in meditation as well. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very brief look at the garden here. There's lots of areas we haven't seen. We've got 4 walled courtyard gardens. We've got a grove of Californian redwoods, a couple of beautiful lakes. So do come out and visit us sometime when lockdown's over. We have garden open days in spring and autumn. We have Buddhist festivals and interfaith festivals a couple of times a year. We have regular classes here on meditation and Buddhist philosophy, and lots of meditation retreats. It's a lovely place to come to, and we get lots of visits from different community groups coming out here. So that's another possibility. So yep, thanks for tuning in, and yep, have a good day. Thank you.